Calypso Rose, she's a queen.
On stage, she's a beautiful dynamo.
She's my love. I grew up with Calypso Rose music.
Yeah, and she's an icon. She spread the culture around the world.
Now Rose is the mother of Calypso. I am glad you asked me to do this thing. On Calypso Rose you asked me to sing. Well, the truth about it is plain to see. Calypso Rose really means a lot to we. As a matter of fact, I am very glad that she was born in Tobago and Trinidad. And the icon that she is today is our country made her that way. Rose, to me, is one of the greatest of all time. And now she is considered like Miriam Makeba.
I took the Calypso Queen. I won 4 titles in 1978. And as I say, I thank thee, I bow, and I exported my music.
A man is a man, but he coughing with consumption. Chinese man or Indian man, any man could give you satisfaction. No, you said no. Oh my God, he said no.
The stage is my life. It is there that I am really myself. I have never been to bed with a man since I was raped to now, because I'm still afraid. Yes, in a way, Calypso has saved me, because the lyrics I have written, which I cannot speak, I put it in song. I have always have a vision as a child to return to the land of my ancestor. The land feed my dreams and my vision since I was born. I am seeking answers to this vision which are in me and which bring me back to the history of my great-grandmother, Martha Paul, a slave from Guinea, Africa. Grandma, oh, pain in my heart. From the very start, I always think of you. They call me the lioness of the jungle.
And now I'm here with Pamela Yates. She's the director of Granito, How to Nail a Dictator. Pleasure to be with you here tonight, Pamela.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pamela, before we talk about Granito, can you tell us about your 1982 film, When the Mountains Tremble?
Yeah, well, Granito is really the sequel to When the Mountains Tremble. When the Mountains Tremble is a film I made in 1982. I was a young, emerging documentary filmmaker, and I went to Guatemala because there was a hidden war going on, and the United States had been aiding and training the Guatemalan military in what we now know was a genocide, the sole genocide in the Americas in the 20th century. And I thought it would be important to tell the story to try to stop the violence in Guatemala. And that became When the Mountains Tremble.
Well, you were such a young, and I would say probably at that age 22, naive. When did you decide that you needed to make this film?
I wasn't that naive. I had been working in Central America as a sound recordist in Nicaragua and El Salvador when I heard about the war in Guatemala. Other people might have perceived me as naive because I was extremely young looking, but I actually knew that the United States had cut off military aid to Guatemala under President Carter because of terrible human rights violations. And then President Reagan was elected, and the Guatemalan military wanted to reopen the flow of arms to increase their counterinsurgency war against the Mayas in the highlands. So I knew that I had stepped into this particular historic moment. They saw me as a megaphone for trying to influence America and American Congress to reopen the flow of arms. But I knew I was actually getting the story about what was happening in Guatemala.
I see. So there's some intense reporting going on in your mind at that time. Tell me, what does the title Granito mean?
Granito means tiny grain of sand, and it's actually a Maya concept that comes from the communal values of Mayan communities that says each of us have a tiny grain of sand, a small contribution to make to positive social change, that no one person alone can make that change, and no one person is more heroic than another. So when people come to see Granito, How to Nail a Dictator, I think they go away from the film with this sense of hope and this sense of asking themselves, what is my granito? What is my tiny grain of sand that I can contribute to making this world a better place?
Well, with all the atrocities, this is a beautiful film about a team coming together and each with their own unique talents. Can you tell us about the team that assembled to make this film possible?
Well, Granito is really the story of all the granitos, the people who have never given up on the quest for justice to bring the perpetrators of a genocide. And they've worked for over 30 years to do so. So in Granito, there are 5 Guatemalans, 3 Americans, 1 Spaniard, and they've all come together. But probably the most amazing people in the film are the Guatemalans themselves, because it's been very dangerous to do what they've done. And throughout the years, they've employed this kind of inner courage to keep going forward and having never given up. And so at the end of the film, people feel emboldened and empowered to add their granito as well.
That's wonderful. And so for you yourself and maybe your team, what were some of the obstacles that you faced as you were making this film?
Well, the obstacle was how to tell the best story. And I think initially that when I heard that there was a case being launched against some of the people in When the Mountains Tremble, 2 of the generals in my original film were being investigated for genocide. And I was asked whether I could provide not only the film from back then, but all of the filmic outtakes, what we didn't use in the film. I thought this is a monumental exercise. And all of the outtakes were in a warehouse in the swamplands of New Jersey. So we had to go on a kind of archaeological dig, and what we found has now actually been used as evidence against the generals in the genocide case. It was offered by the prosecution to convince the judge that the dictator in How to Nail a Dictator, General Rios Montt, should actually go to trial, and there was enough evidence to hold him under house arrest.
That's fantastic. I think it's wonderful that you're sending a message that isn't just relevant to the Mayan people and what happened in Guatemala, but around the world. How do you think that filmgoers are relating to this film as they exit? Have you spoken to some? What are they saying?
Oh yeah, well I have a really good sense because I try to go to as many screenings as possible and do a question and answer. And people leave feeling like they can actually do something. And I think they also feel that Guatemala has been a beacon of light in this quest for justice throughout the hemisphere, because no other former president or general in the Americas has ever been charged with genocide, although the Lord knows there's been a lot of genocide in the Americas. And so Guatemala has become a model for human rights defenders around the world in terms of what can be done. You know, ultimately, the takeaway message of Granito, How to Nail a Dictator, is that if you really want to make change, it's going to take a lifetime commitment to do it. And the people that you'll meet in Granito are going to show you what that kind of lifetime commitment means.
Well, without the commitment of filmmakers like yourself, that message would not be heard. So I thank you very much for your time with us, Pamela.
Thank you.
And your effort on this film. And now a clip from Granito, How to Nail a Dictator.
Vaya. Ana Maria. That was my nom de guerre when I filmed with the guerrillas. Ever since I filmed these generals in 1982, I've wanted to see them pay for their crimes.
It is so hard to nail senior military officers who ordered this. When you want to indict a dictator, you need evidence.
Witnessing is the essence of being a documentary filmmaker. Capturing moments in time, never knowing how history will judge them.
People have it in their minds that anyone can be killed in Guatemala for nothing.
When I think about defendants, I get really angry. You know, I get really pissed.
The came addressed to me. So it says, Freddy, tenemos a la vista los colegios y los trabajos de todos. En parte los regaremos por la ciudad.
Nunca vamos a callarnos. Tío Mon quiere callarnos, pero no puede. Mi nombre tiene un significativo. Antonio quiere decir, es el que enfrenta con el enemigo.
Si no se une el pueblo maya, no vamos a sobrevivir.
So when we come along and do this kind of work, they're afraid. They're afraid, and they should be afraid, because we're coming after them.
Veit Helmer is the director of Baikonur, which is having its American premiere at Filmfest DC. Veit, good evening.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming out to DC today. So, tell us about this very original, interesting love story, Baikonur.
Baikonur is a story set at the Cosmodrome, the station where Yuri Gagarin 50 years ago went to space. And we were the first film crew who actually shot a film there, a narrative film there. So it's about a cosmonaut who goes to space, but the film starts more or less when she comes back to Earth and she falls into the desert and somebody finds her and brings her to his yurt.
So where did you get the idea to have this like very original, interesting setting for a love story?
I was intrigued by the place since many, many years, but it was a forbidden place. It was under military control and nobody could go there. So when I heard that there might be a possibility to shoot a movie, then I started to research about events, funny things happening there. And it appeared to my ears that people live around Baikonur and they collect metal pieces which fall down from the rockets. When the rockets go up, pieces fall down, they collect these pieces, and sometimes the cosmonauts also falling into the steppe. And usually there's a rescue team, but sometimes, not very often, but sometimes the rescue teams, they come later, they arrive later than the local villagers. So more or less the story was there. There's a lot of true facts in my film.
That's so interesting, because that's where you tie in the Kazakh proverb about what goes up. What is it again?
Whatever falls from heaven belongs to the person who finds it.
Yeah, that's such a great proverb to include in this film.
So that's a lot of jokes in the film because people collect the pieces and they think it's mine. And then when the girl falls down, the boy says, okay, she's mine too.
Right, and so tell us about shooting there. You shot out at Star City outside of Moscow and shooting at the actual Baikonur Cosmodrome. What was that process like?
I thought it will be very difficult. Actually, it was difficult, but more difficult was actually to get the permissions to shoot in Kazakhstan. Because since Borat, the Kazakh government is very wary about foreign directors doing comedies in their country. And they really thought, does he want to make jokes about us? And I needed really to convince the people that I am not making jokes and that this is a serious film. It is a comedy film, a love story, but I wasn't, there was no intention to make fun about Kazakhstan.
Absolutely. And so then you actually wanted to teach your crew, more about the whole cosmonaut process. So what did you do with them?
We researched first. I went with my writer to Baikonur because, you hear some stories, you read something, but the best thing is to see it with your own eyes. And then you really get more inspiration for the screenplay. And then when we shot, we were there with a very small crew. It was more like a documentary shooting process because it was not like we could say, okay, can you bring the rocket a little bit more to the left or the right? They were having their own schedule and we had to accommodate. We had to fit in whatever we could take and shoot. That was all we had. We couldn't tell them, bring the rocket down once more, shoot it up, No, they weren't waiting for us. We had to be ready. And the other part of the film we shot in a village which we constructed in Kazakhstan. We made ourselves, we built a village, and there we had like a full film crew, 40 people, and we shot like in studio conditions because it was our village and nobody disturbed us.
So outside of all the filmmaking, etc., what's been the response from folks when they come out of your film?
So far, very good. Today you see this full. People had to go home because they couldn't get tickets. So that's the best thing. You I mean, I don't want people not getting tickets, but it's really nice, you know, have a full room.
Absolutely. And actually, you're no stranger to Filmfest DC. You were here some years